complex fitness. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Alright guys, so welcome back. We are going to go into something a little bit different today. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a study for a change, and we're going to just interpret some of the data from that study and delve into it a little bit deeper then. So the main point of this study is to bring up the correlation causation debate. So a lot of the time, and a lot of things I would preach, is that correlation does not equate to causation. So just because one thing is happening doesn't mean that's triggering another. That's an important point here. Now, before we get in, just what we're going to go through today is the MRI findings and the relationship they have to pain, specifically lower back pain. And I'm going to go with lower back pain because it's funny, between all the muscle groups we use, as soon as something or as soon as a bit of pain, even if it's just muscular pain happens in the back, people tend to panic a little bit. So the main topic is, do we just submit to pain because we have proof of an abnormality? Now, an abnormality isn't as abnormal as we think. From disc bulges, disc degenerations, disc protrusions, which we're going to go through, they're not as abnormal as we think. So the main point of this is to look at, I often see someone who is maybe fine or may have a little niggle, and they go and they get some diagnosis, and all of a sudden it's this huge thing, and it's totally holding them back, and they're not able to improve. They're not able to even work around this injury or this niggle or whatever it is. They're totally held back because now this thing this small pain that they had has a specific name, and that panics them. So what I want to kind of point out here is that abnormalities aren't a bad thing, number one. They're not uncommon, number two. And that number three, language is very, very important. So whether we're training someone, diagnosing someone, or bringing someone through physio, guiding them, the language we use is really important. So it's not going to do you or the client any good to put, I suppose, negative connotations on what's happening to them. For example, telling someone they have weak hips or tight hips or they can't move with quality. Rather, consider building self-efficacy around what they can do and focusing on what they can do. And if something is lagging behind or you feel something needs to pick up, work on step-by-step approach to get to that point, rather than just shooting them down and telling them they're weak or telling them they have weaknesses. And that's the whole point of today, really, is to just look at these kind of things. So the study I will look at for this particular topic is a paper published online on the 27th of November 2014. I'm going to butcher this name, by W. Brinjuki, if that's how you pronounce it, and company. There were many others involved in the paper. So it's a systematic literature review of imaging features in spinal degenerations in asymptomatic populations. Now that's the important part. It was done on asymptomatic populations, so people with no symptoms or pain. So first, let's define three things. Disc degenerations are changes to the normal structure of discs within the spine. Disc bulge is when the structure of the disc is changed in that the outer border is weakened, and disc protrusion is when the outer ring is weakened to the point where the inner jelly-like substance pushes outwards. So they're the three things we're really looking at. Then the details of this study. So there was 3,110 people. None of them had back pain. None of them had symptoms of back pain, any back pain, lower back, anywhere. All had an MRI on their lower back. They looked for 8 things in total, but we're going to focus on the 3 most common ones we see day to day, which is disc degeneration, disc bulge, and disc protrusion, which is what people have most, I suppose, people have most in common with, or people have heard these ones the most. So what did they find through these studies? Now this is interesting. So again, these populations had nothing, no pain, nothing wrong with them. All perfect. In 20-year-olds, it showed 37% of them showed disc degenerations. 30% showed a disc bulge. 29% showed disc protrusions. So again, that's quite a large amount in the region of 20 to 30-year-olds. You go to 30-year-olds, again, 52%, 40%, 31%. Everything has raised, especially disc degenerations has shot up. Everything's coming up in percent, and these are the main. This is when people talk about this paper, people only go over the 20 to 30 and 30 to 40 year olds. But I went and found the paper and got the 40 to 50 year olds and 50 to 60 year olds as well. And you can see there's another jump in all three. So what's interesting here? What's interesting is a high percent of these people have something abnormal with them, have something abnormal in their lower back, or medically abnormal. Even though it is pretty normal, it comes with age and things are going to happen. Discs are going to move. The body is going to change. So obviously we can see how normal it is for these things to happen. Like, keep in mind, none of these people were in pain. That's the really important thing here. None of these people were in pain. So first, MRI findings do not equate to pain. So if you tell someone for long enough that they are a horse, they will start eating hay. So again, we're just going to touch on building some self-efficacy and learn that asymmetries are normal. Usain Bolt has a 14% asymmetry in his hips, which means his stride length is very different. It's not as smooth as people may think, and he's doing just fine. So ask yourself, are you in pain because someone is telling you that you should be in pain? Now, the main thing is do these out of norm readings dictate your ability to move pain free, or do they dictate you? So what's important is, if that amount of percent, if that high of a percentage of people have these asymmetries or these abnormalities in their lower back experiencing no pain, then obviously people with a bit of pain might have higher percentages or might have the same percentages. That does not mean that pain is stemming from those MRI findings. That pain could be to do with a lot of other things. It could be to do with your lifestyle. Maybe there's a lot of inflammation from carrying excess body fat, poor lifestyle choices, poor nutrition, poor sleep, high stress, poor stress management, poor time management, things like that. So really what we need to do is start looking beyond. Obviously, MRIs are great, and look, if something's broken or snapped, something's broken or snapped. But for things like this, where it's just seen as an abnormality, it does not mean that is causing the pain. It might be just happening in conjunction with the pain. So again, with MRI findings, obviously they have their place, but you should be taking them with the guidance of someone else, so of a physio. I'm not a physio, don't come asking me these kind of questions, or someone who can interpret the data. So if you are working with a personal trainer, and I've seen this happen as well, and we've started doing a lot of row movements where you're pulling towards, or either vertical or horizontal rows where we're pulling a lot, oftentimes, or hinging a lot where our hips are coming back. Oftentimes that puts our lower back, upper back under a little bit of pressure, and there might be a bit of muscle pain there. But as soon as pain hits the back, people start panicking, and then they run to their doctor, and a lot of the times they might get a bit of pain medication or whatever, and then down the line that might lead to an MRI, and that MRI might bring up these bulging discs or these disc degenerations or protrusions, as we spoke about. That doesn't necessarily mean that is what has caused the pain. That might just be there. So again, focus on building self-efficacy and learning how to move pain-free even with these abnormalities. And that's basically today's message. And we're going to go through a few kind of studies like this that really look at correlation and causation. Just if something's happening in line with something else, it does not mean it's causing that thing. And that is pretty much today's one. It's a very quick one, but again, it's a bit different to the last few. I'll try to get a few more studies up. I know people kind of like to see some data and some readings behind them. So I hope you enjoyed that. And again, if you have any questions or if you want me to cover any topics, I'll put a link in the bottom and you can just DM me on Instagram at Complex Fitness.